Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about repotting basics. With spring and summer right around the corner, I just wanted to go over a little bit about the basics of repotting your plants so that you're ready to take on this task when the ideal growing season is upon us. So I have two of my own plants here that are really in need of a repot. And firstly, I just want to go over some signs or symptoms that may indicate that your plant needs to be repotted. One of the main things that is easy to notice is overgrown roots. Overgrown roots that are sticking out of the pot, coming out of the top of the soil. That plant is most likely going to need to be repotted, but this is not a one-all deciding factor. Use your own discretion. If the plant still seems really happy, sometimes you can just leave it alone. Another indication that your plant may need to be repotted is if it is just not growing at all. If it's just been a really easily growing plant and it's just stunted, sometimes this means that it's ready for a bigger pot to be able to expand that root system and grow a bigger plant. In addition to this, another way you can tell sometimes is if those roots, if you can see into your pot, if they're all coiled around the bottom, like over and over and over on top of one another, and the water's just running right through your pot, it's most likely needs to be repotted. So those are just a few ways. There's a lot of ways that you can tell. I mean, just use your own discretion. Listen to your plants, I guess. But plants are kind of a learning curve, and you gotta figure out what works for you. So this is not a definitive list. And just if one of your plants is doing one of these things doesn't necessarily mean it has to be repotted. It's just something to potentially look into, especially going into the spring, as this is when you want your plants to be able to really thrive and grow. Another thing I want to go over before we go into repotting our plants is the different types of pots that you can plant your plants in. So we have a hole, no hole. Okay, this is something I feel very passionately about. This, if you find a pot that has no hole that you love and you want to use it, here's my recommendation to you. Plants need drainage, otherwise you're going to end up with root rot and all kinds of problems. So if you find a pretty pot that you love, it's got no hole, go ahead and plant that plant into a nursery pot with holes that fits and just plop it right in there. Okay, because then you can take it out when you're watering it, drain it out. Once it's done draining, put it in there. This, I would not use this personally. I guess if you're a real risk taker, you could go for it, but a hole in your pot is gonna save you so many headaches because plants need this drainage and it's just gonna lead to a much happier plant. Next thing I wanna talk about is soil. So when I first got into plants, I was just using Miracle-Gro or whatever soil I could find at the store, which honestly is fine. I think you can use any potting mix or any indoor potting mix you can find, or it's in your budget or whatever you want to use. But I feel like I eventually started going down a rabbit hole of all these different potting mediums and people saying that you need to add all these things and do all these fancy stuff or buy these expensive mixes. And I slow down. This can help your plants. Some people really like it. I don't think it's necessary. It shouldn't be so complex. Yes, you can add things like cocoa coir, bark, charcoal into your soil. It can get really expensive and really complex, and also buying those fancy mixes can be really expensive and it adds up quickly, especially if you're potting things in bigger pots or just a lot of plants. My really easy indoor potting mix that I use for almost all of my plants is I use Fox Farm soil, okay? This is my favorite. It is natural and organic, and also it's super light and airy. It's formulated for houseplants. It has added perlite in there already. But then in addition to this, I am an over lover of my plants, and I have a really bad habit of wanting to water them too much. So I will always add in really chunky perlite. This is like the chunkiest perlite you can get. Mixing these together creates a really nice, airy, and light soil that drains really nicely. It dries out quickly, especially when your plants are inside. You want to have better drainage and better aeration because you're just not getting those outside elements. You might not be getting a storm of sun, wind, all that good stuff that helps a plant dry out. Inside, you want really good aeration. So if I could give you one advice about soil for your indoor houseplants, use whatever indoor potting mix you want. I don't think it matters. Soil is soil. It's all gonna do the same thing. It's natural, it comes out of the ground. Don't get caught up in all the do's and don'ts. But you buy a potting mix, but buy some sort of perlite to mix in with it to give it that aeration. And I can promise you, your plants will be so much happier. They'll dry out quicker, and I think that you'll get less root rot. At least that's been my experience. But like I said, use whatever soil works for you, whatever convenient for you. Buy it from Lowe's, buy it from Walmart, it doesn't matter. But I would add in perlite for aeration. You can buy perlite at Lowe's or any of your local probably garden stores. So if you haven't tried it out, try it out. If you've tried it out, let me know in the comments how much it's worked for you, or if you have any other tips or tricks for people. But that is my go-to soil mixture. So I'm gonna mix it up here really quick. I'm just using a small little bin to mix it up. Usually I put it in a big bin, but for the sake of this video, I'm just doing a small bin. Okay, so this is what my mixture looks like before I've mixed it all up. I'm gonna be honest, okay? So many people, when I was first trying to find a soil that worked for me, they were like, 1/3 this, half this, blah, blah, blah. I am not a math girly, okay? I love plants. I love all that, but I'm not gonna pretend to be a math girly and lie and tell you I measure out my soil when I mix it. I don't. I measure with the heart, and then I mix it up, and then if it's chunky, it's chunky. If I want it to be chunkier, I add in more, and I go from there. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's what my soil usually looks like towards the end. A good mixture of chunky and not chunky. Like I said, it's all about preference. Mess around with it. Figure out what you like. Chunky perlite, non-chunky perlite. Don't let anyone bully you into doing plants a certain way. There is no exact science. So as long as you're having fun and it's making you happy, then you got a big thumbs up from me. Okay, so today I'm gonna be repotting this girl. This pink splash, okay, is the fastest growing little plant. I feel like I am constantly repotting her, but let's do it. I usually squeeze the pot a little bit to get it out. You don't want to like yank it out, but we lost a little bit. Just a little bit, but she'll be okay, I promise. She'll be okay. Okay, honestly guys, I'm gonna just leave her like this. Sometimes I tear it apart. I'm not gonna do that right now. So, everyone says size doesn't matter. In this instance, size very much matters. And in this instance, I mean when you're picking your next pot. So you do not want to put your plant in too big of a pot, because this is another instance where you're just going to be asking for your plant to get root rot or overwatered. Plants don't want too big of a pot. It's just really not necessary. So we have a root ball here in the plant. We want to pick a pot that's only 1 to 2 inches bigger than the root ball. So this is like perfect. So here's our old pot. My root ball is literally as big as this because the roots grow like crazy. This is only like a 1 inch bigger pot, but it's a little deeper, which is perfect for these longer roots. So I'm gonna leave this old soil on here because if this soil's fine, if it's my own soil, I've repotted this before. I like this soil. I know it's my soil, pest free. Leaving this older soil on the plant when repotting it is going to help it avoid less shock. If you don't take all this old soil off and still leave it in there, it's gonna have a much better time transitioning into its new pot. So that's what we're gonna do here. And repotting, I'm gonna pot up, but I wanted to stop here and just cover something. Sometimes you don't need to pot up. If you take out a plant that you thought was stunted, you just wanted to repot it, you get it out of the pot and you're like, oh, the root ball is not actually that much bigger, what do I do? Don't panic and put it in a bigger pot. Sometimes plants simply just want new, fresh potting medium. So just go ahead, use that same pot, be confident in the size of the pot with the root ball, and just put new soil. And sometimes that will be enough to make the plant happy again. If you unpot a plant, don't panic and put it in a bigger pot if it doesn't need a bigger pot. That's just not necessary, and it could be detrimental to your plant. So I'm gonna fill up like the bottom 1/4 with soil in my new pot. We're gonna take our old plant and just plop him right on in there. And then I'm gonna fill in around him. I just use my hands. You could use a shovel, you could use a cup. Once again, you use whatever works for you, use whatever makes you happy. There's no rule book. I think that's one of my favorite things about plants is there's just no rule book. It's just do what makes you happy, you know? You want to make sure that you're really getting your soil down in there when repotting a plant, because if you don't, so when I repot and I think I've got it all in all the crevices, I'm going to go ahead and slap the pot. That's just what I could say. I've heard other plant people say it. I got it from another plant page. I'm obsessed. It's one of my go-tos now. You slap the pot, because otherwise what can happen is you'll go to water your plant for the first time and all of a sudden you're going to have a big old crater hole and you're going to be like, what the heck? It's because you didn't slap the pot. So slap the pot. It's going to help all that stuff get down in those areas you didn't know you missed, because it just happens. And then you can fill in, and this will avoid you having to fill in at a later date. So here is our new repotted pink splash, and this is just in a nursery pot with drainage holes. I use nursery pots a lot. I think they're really nice to take out and water. They work really well for me. I don't ever get rid of any of my nursery pots if I buy a plant. I like to keep it, reuse it. It always comes in handy, whether I'm propagating and sharing with a friend. I just like keeping them around. And then I'm just gonna find a cute little pot to set this in. And she's gonna be so happy now and probably keep growing, because now she has extra room. So I hope this video was helpful for anyone that is maybe new to plants or just wanting a refresher on potting. I had a lot of fun making it. I'm so excited for spring. Thank you all for joining me. And if you like this content, go ahead and like and subscribe down below.